Welcome to the Play with Confidence podcast, brought to you by Zena Sport. Zena Sport, the most advanced female impact protection designed by women for women. We know the dedication, sacrifice and discipline required for female athletes to play and perform at the highest level. And this podcast is aimed at giving you a front row seat and an inside look at the many perspectives of women's sport, from the athletes themselves to champions across many domains. This podcast is a must for anybody who shares our one common passion: championing women's sports at all levels. So sit back and enjoy as Play with Confidence takes you on a journey through the sharpest minds with one objective: to understand what makes these champions tick.
Welcome to the inaugural podcast of Play with Confidence, brought to you by Zena Sport. And given it's our first ever Play with Confidence podcast, it's only fitting that this episode we are completely focused on our founders, Donna and Brad Johnson. Guys, welcome to the first podcast.
Thank you, James.
It's exciting.
It is very exciting.
It is super exciting. So welcome you both to this amazing journey, which is Zena. I'm really looking forward to unpacking some of the journey for our listeners. But before we start, a little bit about you guys. And I know you'll hate this because you never want to talk about yourself. So Donna Johnson's a co-founder in Zena Sport. Without a doubt, the most passionate advocate for raising awareness for women in sport that I've ever met in my life, specifically around breast health and injury prevention. Just amazing. She's also the chief designer and inaugural product inventor of the Z1 vest, although she won't give herself that credit, and an absolute amazing spokeswoman for raising awareness for young girls in sport. Her partner and co-founder in crime with Zena Sport is Brad Johnson, a 25-year and still going veteran in the AFL, an ex-player, captain, now a commentator, and also a co-founder, as I mentioned, in Zena Sport. He's also a massive advocate for athletes at all levels, especially juniors, especially in the areas of prevention. So welcome, guys, to the very first ever episode of your own podcast, Play with Confidence. So it's great to have you both on. I'm really excited to give our listeners an insight into you both, and in particular into the Zena story. So the way that I'm going to kick things off is by asking you, Donna, what's your story and why and how did you start Zena?
Well, Zena basically just came about purely over a coffee with my best friend. We usually catch up on a Monday morning and sort of debrief about the weekend. And it was a few years ago now when girls were able to start playing AFL football. So she's a mum of four and her three daughters started playing football. And they ranged from, 8 years of age right through to 17. So we were just discussing the injuries that had occurred on the weekend. We were just talking about how, the girls hadn't had that opportunity to come through junior programs like the boys. And, I flippantly just threw out there, that I couldn't believe that these girls were playing such an intense high contact sport without any level of chest or rib protection, especially given that they were at such a vulnerable age in their development of adolescence. And it was just something that concerned me. So I never thought in a million years that it would turn into a business, let alone producing the actual Zena vest. But that night I sort of continued the conversation on with Brad, just talking in general about professional athletes as well and the AFLW, and that these girls were wearing no form of protection. So he encouraged me to look into it, which I did. And then I just each day would just jump on the computer and start Googling, breast trauma, breast injury, and, products. And there was no products on the market other than a hard shell, which was used for martial arts. And there was also very, very little research. So as I said in the beginning, it was never about creating a business. It just sort of kept snowballing. We kept talking to people. We kept researching. And then, one thing led to another. And, 3 years down the track, we actually produced a sample. So, it's crazy to think it's been 5 years now. It's gone so fast. But I suppose it just shows you, what it takes and what goes into developing such a product.
You know, there's so many things to love about your story, but it starts as a coffee with mates. The idea is born, and then the idea sort of moves into a conversation. You said you Googled more research, you know, then you go and probably make a vest, like you said, 3 years down the line. Tell me what fueled your passion along the way, Donna. So what continued to sort of, because a lot of people have ideas and they just say ideas, right?
I think at the time it's really important to note that, probably 12 months prior to that, I was in a really flat place. Our son had gone off to year 7. I was sort of home. We'd made that decision for me to stay home while the kids were young, given Brad's commitments, work commitments and travel. And so when he went off to year 7, I'd been out of the workforce for so long. I was getting pretty down and out about myself. And I just felt like I had no qualifications. I had no, talents. Where could I possibly even go to start getting a job? I'd missed that whole technological era of, things, and I was really starting to get down on myself. So, I'd always listen to podcasts about people who came up with these ideas and just sort of think, why not me? And, I know there's more out there for me and all that sort of stuff. But then I suppose the thing with the Zena thing was that I never, ever thought of it as a possibility. So that's probably what kept me going, because I didn't tell anyone about it. I didn't tell anyone about the idea. I just sort of kept going along. And then obviously I spoke to a few people in my inner circle who really encouraged me. And then, with that, I sort of just kept progressing.
The drive and the determination and the leadership to get you should be so proud of yourself. But that purpose that you talk about is so evident. So massive congratulations to you. So Brad, a question for you. So Donna comes home from her coffee. She's got this idea, and tell me what your first thoughts were.
Well, look, I thought it was a great idea, to be perfectly honest. Having worn an aspect of protection while I was playing, James, especially in my rib area later in my career. So I was able to sort of understand the benefits that can come from it. And in sport, it's more around, I suppose, looking after yourself when you are injured. In a way, you try and get back to play. So you look for ways that you can sort of get back into playing, rather than thinking about it prior and preventing some of these things so you mightn't, get as sore in certain elements, especially in footy. So I love the idea. I thought it was great. And I just sort of sat back and sort of just tried to assist as much as I could in terms of the research component of what was out there in the market, and was really keen for Donna to explore it further because of what she was just talking about before. And it just, you could see the sparkle in her eye again in terms of a real commitment to having something to own and really push forward herself. So that was the best part for me. So once I saw that, I was like, okay, well, you got to go full steam ahead with this, and how can we go about it? We had to learn a lot about business. We had to learn a lot about how to shape a business. We're still learning a lot about that at the moment. It was 3 years of hard work, but we got there in the end with our sample. It was great. The girls loved putting it on for the first time. We're able then to develop that a little bit further to what we have today. And I love talking sport, JC. So it's the best thing in the world for me, because I get to speak to so many people from different sports outside of footy that I just absolutely love that side of it as well.
I think that's the exciting thing, though, is that we, when we finished up at the Western Bulldogs, we really felt that loss of that club environment and just being in that, inner sanctum. And so, even though it's 10 years on, being able to go back to all these sporting clubs and, just seeing how talented these girls are. The first session that I went to at the Geelong Cats, like, they blew me away with their fitness. It was amazing. So I think, that sort of really fueled our passion, because we get to experience, what it's like to be back in that sort of sporting arena again.
One of the things I love about your story from the moment, it started to unveil for me, more than 12 months ago now, is, Brad, your fierce loyalty and support of Donna. I think it's a beautiful story. I mean, I'm not going to try and turn this podcast into a love story, but one thing I love about it, but I say it with all sincerity, because, Donna, you talk about, stepping out of this family, being the Western Bulldogs and the camaraderie and what have you. But what I've actually seen through you guys, that's the kind of model and culture you've built this business on. the partnership that you two definitely show, and also PJ, with people in the inner sanctum, and also the partners you work with, the camaraderie, the teamwork. And one of the things, Brad, that I've really respected from afar as a result of you is, you haven't stepped into Donna coming home with this idea, with this research, and saying, well, now I'll drive it. It's very much been around, okay, well, Donna's driving it, but I'll play my role to support. So talk to me a little bit about that, because it's a real, strength and testament to your partnership, both of you.
Yeah, look, it's something that, like, when you play footy for as long as you do, as long as I did at the Bulldogs, it's a real sort of, you're a bit selfish in a way, because you're relying on everyone doing everything around you so you can prepare to play your very best on the weekend. So everything I did during the week, at a lot of the time, Donna would hold off on what she had planned, because all of a sudden something came up that I needed to attend for the Bulldogs, or I had training sessions that we had planned, but then they got changed, so we had to adjust things along the way. So it was all based around, probably my week, everything else that we used to do a lot until the season ended and we had a break in holiday. So for me, this is why I'm so pumped for Donna to have established what she has, because I can sit back now and everything's revolved around Donna and where she's going for the week and what we need to do in terms of the business and what meetings we have and bits and pieces. So it's all now shaped back the other way. But I'm wrapped with that, because it just gives Donna that sense that, this is hers to really push forward with, and I'm happy to sit back and, like I said, whenever I'm called on to do certain aspects of the business, whether that's packing some vests or shipping them off, or going to talk to some different sports and stuff like that, which I'm really passionate about. It's great to jump in, and that's where we've really worked out the last few years, our sort of strength elements of what we love doing within the business. So Donna loves the design and all those sort of things, and getting the vest up and going, and working with the people we have in the business to do that. And I love the sport, so I love talking to the different sports. So we've been able to really work out those sort of things for our love for what we enjoy doing within the business.
In saying that, though, Brad is up at 6:30 every morning and he does not finish probably till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and he works endlessly on Zena. He is forever in that study. So, I think I always remember a quote that always stuck with me from Richard Branson, that was basically like, you have to put people in place around you to do the things that aren't your strengths. So sure, I came up with the idea, but it would never, ever have got to this point if it wasn't for all the people that I have in place around me. Obviously from the very beginning, Brad in believing in me, but, also Modulus Design and Amanda, who I work with in terms of bringing the actual idea to life, and then JC, all your crew and what they're doing for us at the moment. So, I can't take all the credit, but Brad, he just puts 150% in every single day.
Yeah, so we don't pretend, James. We don't pretend to really know something. We like to get the right people in so that we can continue to push forward. We don't second guess ourselves in that way then. So I think that's been a real strength to what Donna's been able to create, and certainly myself following on through is asking the right questions, not afraid to, because that's allowed us to get to the point that we are within the business. So we can, we've tested the waters for a couple of years now at elite level right through to junior levels, and it's been great fun. We've had great feedback. It's been awesome. So we're ready to really sort of push this as hard as we possibly can and get the vest onto as many girls in various sports.
It would be remiss of me not to call out the first insight for our listeners. I mean, you're hearing firsthand from the two founders, authenticity, humility, both humble. But, I think what you guys have also taught off the sporting field is the roles, having clear roles and responsibilities, and having trust and teamwork. You've brought those virtues that you obviously both, learned through the early years right into Zena. It's a credit to you. So, Donna, tell us about the vest. I'm curious, first and foremost, because, now I go and buy 200 grams of ham for my kids, and I realise that the vest weighs less, right? And I'm like, wow, that's kind of. But tell us about the vest, and how did you come up with the name Zena?
So the name Zena is actually a name that we called our friend, who was the girl that I had coffee with of all people, who's very fit and very healthy.
So she's a warrior princess.
Back in the day, many years ago, we would call her Zena Warrior Princess. And for all those young people out there, she is I don't even know what she is, a character.
Yes.
And so we were in the kitchen literally trying to throw all these funky names around, and we could not come up with anything. And then Brad was just like, well, what about Zena? And we all just sort of stopped and we were like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe. And so I researched it, looked it up, and it meant, woman in many cultures and
strength and
all that. So, yeah, I think the name was fitting for, a female product. And then in regards to the vest, it took us a good 12 months even just to start the concept because, and in the initial days, if we were going to provide something for girls that was protective, it was really important to me that the padding did what it said it was going to do. And you can go and buy products anywhere at the moment, that claim that they are protective, et cetera. But, consciously I wanted to know that if I sent girls out there wearing it, it was going to, do what it said it was going to do. So the padding itself was probably about 18 months in the making just to find the right manufacturer who could do what we wanted. So we use a injected molding, which therefore makes the vest actually really lightweight. So as you said, in regards to your ham, it only weighs 160 grams. And I think that can be deceiving for some people because initially when we did our testing, some girls felt as though it needed to be a lot thicker and a lot bigger in order to provide the protection, but that's not the case with this particular injected molding. So it keeps its retention. So each time it's impacted, it goes back to the way it was. So it doesn't lose its protection, over time. It was important to include the ribs into it, having suffered 10 years with a rib injury myself. I know the impact that it can have on your daily life. So that was really important for me. We tried a number of concepts and in the end we came up with the inverted zip, which, we had to also resource because we wanted it to be safe. And that's purely just for the ease of being able to get it on and off. And it's also treated with microband technology, which allows it not to build up bacteria and, smell and things like that. So, yeah.
It's been great. We've added the GPS pocket in the back as well now so that, the elite girls right through. If you want to track your performance, you can certainly do that with. And I
think the biggest thing too is that it has no seams. So it has a silicone flocking around the bottom, which makes sure it doesn't ride up. But basically, the first thing everyone says, when they put it on is just how comfortable it is. They don't realize they're wearing it. They almost feel superhuman. I think one of our girls said she felt like she could run through a brick wall, but we said, don't do that. We don't advise that. So, yeah, and I think the biggest thing for me, obviously it's a business, but we don't really think of it in that way. For me, the relationships that I've been able to build with these girls and these professional athletes, and, they all joke around with me sometimes in terms of the mother sort of figure that I am, because I'll watch them play, and if I see any of them get injured, I'll text them afterwards to make sure they had their vest on. And we had one girl who forgot her vest one day, and she was down in Geelong, and she got absolutely cleaned up. And the first thing that came to her mind was like, oh, my God, Donna's going to be watching this. So I got a text straight away. So I think that's been the best part of the whole journey.
It has been. And even some of the messages you've got from just
absolutely.
People in the community that are wearing it at various levels, and there's various reasons why there's participants wear the vest for their own health issues, for where they are in sport and their development as well, and I think confidence.
It's interesting to note that like initially the idea was purely just for adolescent girls playing football. And from that, it then grew to senior girls playing football and professionals. And then it grew to other sports. And then it, even went out into the health area with women, who had seen our story and, were going through mastectomies or reconstructive surgery, or women who had breast implant ruptures. And, the stories that I keep getting, they just keep going on and on and on. So, I think that's sort of really shown that there's a need not only just for sport, but there's so many people that need it in other areas of life as well.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, the next question was going to actually be around what have been some of the most satisfying moments, and you've kind of touched on it. So on that note, you've suddenly now, not suddenly, because a lot of hard work, testing and trialing that you both described, but 4+ years on, almost 5 years on, you've got more than 5,000 women globally around the world using this vest, 20+ sports, and there's probably 30+, but 20+ sports. You're being used heavily in the military, in the police force, protective services, medical arena. How do you manage customer experience? So, I love that you said, hey, watch the girls and text them and make sure that they're okay. How do you manage customer experience in that context? How do you sort of stay on top of it?
We do it all ourselves. So that's where, at 11 o'clock at night, I'll get back to, Facebook comments or questions, or we pretty much deal with everybody that comes through our DMs or emails ourselves. And I think that's important because we're putting it out there, and I think people sort of have a trust in us as well, that they can confide in us with, personal stories or things that are going on, and that means a lot.
And we're the ones who can answer the real questions too, because we've done the work behind it. So if the questions come through, Donna's straight onto them, and it might take, till the end of the day, and the next morning the person might wake up with a message from Donna in regards to answering some of the questions. But And that's the good part as well. I'll answer some of the aspects around some of the sales stuff and those sort of things, but anything to do with the vest and the body and sizing and all those sort of things, obviously that's where Donna excels. So they go straight to her. So we try and team up as much as we can. The majority of them are answered by Donna in terms of that customer service, which is the most important thing. We love talking to as many people as we can about it.
And I love that you've truly got the customer at the centre of everything that you do. So, the vest starts in theory, for AFLW girls, but now it's used by everybody everywhere. And, are you finding that feedback, Donna and Brad, is actually driving the future roadmap of the product? And, for example, do you get different bits of feedback from different sports, and how does that play out?
I always have to sort of pinch myself, because to me, I was happy just with getting the sample, because to me that, my idea, it was physical there in front of me. So for me, that was great. And then to see the first athlete wear it, that was amazing. This year, I think it was so exciting for us to see it being worn at the Paralympics. I was never going to get to the Olympics, but to think that something that I'd thought up, was there in the change rooms in Tokyo was like huge. So
the Aussie goalball team, the girls, they did so well. It was such a pleasure watching them, the way they had to fight through. They had a loss in their first game, and then they fought back and made the quarters, and that was their biggest result ever. So it was great to be a part of it.
So they're the wins for us. Like that's what sort of keeps us motivated each day. That's what gets us excited. Yep. So.
And in terms of like that feedback, the wins, you talk about the Aussie goalball team. What are some of the sort of what can your users and the wearers of the vest expect in the future? Like, are there new product enhancements coming out?
Yeah, so we're always, evolving. I think the biggest thing for us is that this is the first of its kind worldwide, which is mind-blowing. And so, we often get a lot of emails from men asking, are we going to bring out this sort of product or this sort of product? But at the moment, we're just purely female-focused. We really want to encourage girls to, pursue their dreams and their passions and to stay active, because it's a hard world out there. But yeah, we've got different concepts, coming up for various sports. Obviously, we want to continue to evolve our Zena Z1 and make it more sustainable, add more features to it. Technology is always advancing. So, for us at the moment, really, it's just getting our name out there and making people aware that it's available. And that's what we'll...
And the junior vest is on its way as well. You're working hard in the background on that.
Yes. So we have had a lot of emails from concerned parents over the last 12 months in regards to, their junior girls, their mini Zenas, wanting some sort of vest. So we are in the process. We're just about to receive our first lot of samples for our mini little junior vest, and obviously those girls are wanting to be like their big sisters and everyone else that they see wearing them at the moment. So that's in the pipework, so that should be available early next year.
And the junior one's so exciting. The junior vest is so exciting because it's all about educating young girls and women from 8 years and above, or 7 or 8 years above.
And I think that's something that we haven't touched on in this podcast, was just the lack of knowledge when we went out and spoke to professional female athletes in a room, and majority of them had never even thought about the impact of what a breast trauma could cause. And for me, we went and sat down with about a dozen AFL professional girls, and they told me all of their stories. A lot of girls wear 2 sports bras. A lot of girls bandage themselves. A lot of girls bandage some form of padding to themselves. But just the lack of education around, what are the implications down the track of getting, a really bad breast trauma. And it could be something as minor as some bruising, and it can be, other things that are more sinister or serious. But I think we received a photo from a girl who played softball overseas, which, is quite graphic. And when you see the extent of that injury and the fact that no one's talking about it, that no one's sharing that. I mean, if someone, hurts their knee, not that everyone needs to know about it, but, obviously they report it and they get medical advice and they actually treat the injury. Whereas with a breast trauma, it's sort of kept quiet and women were sort of suffering in silence. So I think one of the biggest things for us now has been to educate girls, self-awareness and self-care, and obviously to educate other staff members in the club, coaches. They need to know about these things because they are now coaching females, which is a lot different to coaching males.
One of the things I love about your journey is, even to this day, the business has grown, the vest has evolved, it's global. You always are centered around educating, and really making sure. And even, for any of our listeners that, want to actually see some of the Deacon research or some of the photos, and some of the photos are quite graphic that Donna puts up, but they're all orientated towards actually teaching and learning. And it's a real credit to you both. So what was that one of the drivers, Donna, for Deacon and partnering with Deacon to do some of that research early on?
I think the biggest driver for me was, I'm a mum. And so if I put my kids in something, I want to know that it's going to work. So, our son is a mad go-karter, and I wouldn't send him out on that track unless he had the highest form of protective equipment. So for me, if I'm going to be selling something to the public and people are going to trust in it, I wanted to make sure that we had some research behind it so that people could, purchase the product with some sort of validation. So, they
were great to work with. Like the Centre for Sport Research, they did a great job. They got their students involved as well, and they all sort of did their high-end assessments on the vest. And it was great to see what they came up with in terms of all the sensors and the impact. And we know exactly what the padding can do and can absorb at some really high levels now. So that's even better, because when we're talking to the elite clubs, they want to know that first up. It's the first question we get asked always. When we're talking to elite organisations as well, and then obviously that filters through to the community levels as well with the various sports and the questions we get asked around the type of padding and the absorption that it can take. So
and I suppose
that was cool.
It continues us on our journey to keep researching and try and find padding, keep working with our manufacturer to find, padding that's going to have a even higher absorption and, things like that. So, so that was really important.
Really, really critical.
And I love the fact that at all levels you're treating it the same way. So if it's my daughter playing junior hockey in Brunswick, she can wear the same vest that Fredericks, who's playing professional football.
Exactly.
Collingwood can wear. I just think it's a beautiful story. You don't, it's all about really educating and protecting at all levels. It's a credit to you both.
And I think another thing is too, like we've got about 70 girls currently in the AFLW wearing it, but all of them have approached us. The impact that we had straight away when we went and did club visits, I was worried. I was like, are they going to even think that, there's a need for this? Whereas, they would all contact us because, they were so interested in it. So,
and see the benefits of it, because it's about being out in the field and playing at your best and recovering well and getting up for the next training session to prepare again. And that's at all levels. So yeah. I think they saw the benefits with the vest like that.
And I think we've had a couple of emails from women who have actually ended up in hospital with injuries, but their doctors have actually said, had they not been wearing the vest, it could have been potentially life-threatening, the injuries that they would have sustained with punctured lungs and things like that. So, it's huge for us when we get emails like that because, it's impacting on people's lives.
It's a massive credit to you both because I think, I do a lot of workshops with organisations on their purpose, and sometimes it's hard to get purpose right, but you guys are so driven and so clear on your purpose that the real challenge for you guys is, my God, where do you start? Because I've seen it firsthand. You could go everywhere with this vest, and the truth is it needs to be everywhere. And then we're always got to sort of pinch ourselves and go, okay, how do we stay narrow and focused? Only because the magnitude is so broad. So it's a credit to you both. Now, I've got a couple more questions because I did promise you that we would do this in an allocated amount of time, and our listeners are still on at 30 plus minutes, which is awesome. If you guys were to sit back now and reflect, you look backwards and, Donna comes home from that meeting with Zena the goddess and, that coffee. What are some of the learnings looking backwards that you've had? Some of the biggest ones.
I think you just know when intrinsically when it's something to pursue. So as I said, we never really saw it as a business that was going to evolve to what it is today, but there was just something inside that kept us researching every day and just sort of kept us interested. Whereas we tried to come up with a heap of ideas previous years before, and they literally were like, what if we did this? And then it just didn't go anywhere from then. But for some reason, for this particular idea, we just sort of, thought we kept pursuing it. And so I think just inside somewhere, we just felt like this could possibly be something.
Yeah. Well, we're seeing 100% of the talent out there now in the park, James. So we want to support as many of the females that are playing, and that's as simple as that. That's the drive.
I just think what a story. You've got just a beautiful couple from the Geelong region, I'll say, so people don't sort of narrow right down on you. But you've got the US military, you've got UK football, the AFL endorsing you. You've got every chapter from every part of the world, the Australian Defence Force knocking on your door because your purpose is so good. All right. 2 more questions. Firstly to you, Donna. What advice would you give Donna now on that, when you first started researching in the early days, what advice would you give back to yourself, at this point, knowing what you know now?
What advice would I give myself? Oh, that's a hard one, James. I don't know. I think that I had to go through that process to get to what we are today. So I think if it had have all happened really easily and quickly, then we probably wouldn't have the foundation that we've got now. So I think we had to sort of chip away, and it had to take a long time. Probably the advice would be don't give up, because honestly, after 12 months, we literally had come to a sticking point where we were at a crossroad. We could not find anyone to do the padding. We had no experience in manufacturing, and we were pretty much ready to throw it in. And for some reason, one day I came home and I did a random Google search, and this Modulus design popped up in Sydney, and I gave them a call, literally put it on the back burner, and they kept calling me and saying, we think that you could be onto something. So had I got to that point, I think it was pretty much we were going to throw it in because we just couldn't progress any further, but we just sort of kept chipping away. So I suppose don't give up.
I love that. Don't give up. I think that's really pertinent advice. What about you, BJ? What advice would you give yourself on the start of this Zena journey?
It's a good one. I like Donna's analogy with it. I suppose it's having confidence to pursue the real confidence to pursue something that you honestly don't know anything about. Because we knew the sports and we knew what we wanted to do, but we didn't know how to go about it. So that's probably the thing when I look back now, I'd go, okay, yeah, have that real confidence from the outset. We've got the confidence now and we know exactly where we are, but we had to break down a lot of barriers within our own self to get to this point and get uncomfortable at times because we didn't know, and we had to spend hours upon hours researching aspects of protection and just the business elements was the most challenging part. So find people around you from the outset that can assist you. You don't have to do it all on your own. There are people that will be willing to assist you in areas that you aren't too sure on. And if I had done that earlier, we might have been able to progress things probably a little bit quicker than what it took. But I agree with Donna, because that allowed us to be in the position and the foundations we set, because we had to learn so much in that first 3 years, has set us up now to actually flow and concentrate on the vest, and the business can tick along underneath with the people we have involved.
I love it because the two sets of advice go together. So Donna's all about don't give up, and yours is all about, get comfortable, be uncomfortable, trust yourself, trust others. And, that's why I think play with confidence and Zena is destined for great things. So one final parting word from each of you. What does the future hold for Zena, Donna?
Oh, the sky's the limit, really. I suppose we're just sort of scraping the surface. So, it'll be interesting. Yeah. I think it's nice because we've got the whole family involved. So I have my mum and dad sitting at the kitchen table packing vests at the moment, right through to the kids who are heavily involved. They hear our conversations, they have input. So I think it's just growing a family business that, who knows?
That's it. And look, James, I want to pump up the podcast because over this time, we're going to talk to so many great athletes and females that influence, the sporting world. Not only the sporting world, but the business world as well. It's going to be great fun to explore that over the next period of time. And I think it'd be great that we get to hear from so many that have a great story to tell, whether in sport or in life as well.
True.
Absolutely beautifully said. So, for anyone listening, a couple of points. A massive thank you and congratulations to you both, Donna and Brad. Just an amazing achievement to get not only this far, but it's only just the beginning. So I would say that the future for Zena, it's already a global business. So, what an amazing story. You guys should be so proud of yourself. And in terms of future podcasts to our listeners, all I can tell you is dial in or tune in because they're going to be amazing. These guys are going to be talking to athletes, captains of industry in terms of the medical profession, doctors, scientists, research analysts. You'll be talking to different athletes, as I mentioned earlier, from different codes, to young junior individuals who are using the vest and giving their feedback. So make sure that you let Donna and Brad know. They mentioned throughout this podcast how much they value feedback. So if you'd like to hear from someone specifically, reach out to them. The best way to reach out to Donna and Brad, they're on LinkedIn, they're on all the socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We know Brad doesn't sleep and Donna responds to everything. So make sure you reach out. Thanks so much for joining us for our inaugural Play with Confidence. Donna and Brad, you're awesome.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Play with Confidence podcast. And don't forget, if you have a request for a specific guest that you would like to hear from, send us a quick message via Instagram, Facebook, or email us at info@zenasport.co. Don't forget to share our podcast with someone who might find it valuable. Till next time, play with confidence and conquer the field with Zena.